Welcome to this new tutorial in which I'm going to talk about the component image. I know you know that the component image will let you put an image on the screen, okay, but in most of the tutorials and webinars, we've always used the component image to display an static image, okay, but with the component image, you can do much more than that. You can use this component to have dynamic images on the screen, okay, so today I want to explain everything you need to know about the component image so you can master it. Okay, so first I'm going to create a new component here in this view. I mean, this is an empty project. I'm going to use this project only to talk about this component. So I'm creating a new image component. Okay, so well, as right after you add the component, it will ask for an image file. Okay, so this is the way you know to put an image on the screen. Okay, if you want to change the image, you can just take any image file and drop it on the any place on the dashboard. Okay, so in this case, the image will be here under the res folder. Okay, so now I can just remove this and then I will have all my options. Okay, I can choose cut, or I can let me drag and drop some more files like this two. Okay, and I will change to this one. Okay, now you see this red panda with green background here on the left and on the right. So I'm going to play a little bit with the dimensions of this component. Okay, so well, now we have a width of 100%, so it's fitting all the screen, I mean, widely. Okay, and I have this height by default that says wrap. Okay, this is very important if you want to use images, because normally you will want to keep the image ratio, right? So if I do the image like smaller, then I keep the ratio. Okay, but this is because I'm using the wrap value. I mean, if you have like a value of 300 here, then the image will be deformed. Okay, so if I make it bigger, it will be still deformed because the image will try to fill all the space inside the limits of this component. Okay, I have this green box for this component. These are the bounds of my component. Okay, so the image is trying to fill all the space. Okay, so if you don't want the image to be deformed when you have like absolute dimensions, then you have to use this parameter called scale. So it only accepts this value, the crop, but you see what happens here? I mean, now the image is not deformed, but it's cropped. It will always try to fill the image horizontally and vertically, okay, but without deforming the image. So we are losing some information here. All the part, or all the green part of this image is lost because it's cropped, okay? So yeah, let me change the ID for this image. You should, I mean, you've seen that when you create a new component, Codoozer will give you a random ID. You should always change that ID, okay? Because when you fold these components, it's always good to know the name because it will make edition easier for you. So, well, let me go back to the wrap value and have this 100%. Well, this is also useful, sorry. In case you want to use images as backgrounds, you can use the parameter position and use the absolute value. Okay. Well, by default, all the components have a position with a relative value. Even if the parameter is not here, they always be relative to other components. This means that all the components are placed like one below the other, like with a vertical stack. Okay. Sometimes if you put them in a group and you select horizontal orientation, then they will be one next to the other in the same line. But if you use position absolute, this means that this component is out of the stack. So it's like floating on the screen or on the background. In this case, since it's the first component, it will be on the background. So you can use height of 100% and a width of 100%. And as far as it also has the scale crop parameter, then it will always fill the whole space here. Okay, but that's good for static images. I guess that's all you need to know about static images. Only with these little parameters, you can put the image wherever you want. I mean, you can decide the dimensions of your image. Okay, but let's go further and start having dynamic images. Okay, so let me go back to wrap value and remove this absolute position. So we have another parameter called source. So we use this parameter in case we want to tell the app that the content of this component is unknown right now, but it will come from some source. The source can be a reference, like a property, a cookie. It can be a database. It can be Firebase storage. It can be even a file that the user picks from the image gallery, for example. So let's try it. So first I'm going to use, for example, in this case, I'm going to use a property. So I use add property dot, and let's call it, I don't know, file, right? So let me add some buttons so I can let the user change the content of this image dynamically in real time. Okay, so I'm going to add a text. I will say button cat. I will write here cat and with a wrap width and some padding like 12. And then I will use h-align center. Okay, that's good enough. So I want the app to change the picture if the user clicks on this text. So I'm going to use the onClick event. And now let's do some magic. So I want to change the value of this property. Okay, because by default, this is a property, so it shouldn't have a value from past sessions of the app. Okay, and I haven't initialized this value, this reference. So when I will open the app, this property.file won't have any value. So the component image will use the value here on the file parameter. Okay, this is the default image. Okay, but I want the user to change the image and I will use this property. So as soon as this property changes its value, then the image will change, because the component, if I use a reference here at source, I'm telling the app to keep listening to this source, to this reference. Okay, so the component image will be always listening to any change in this value, in this reference. So if I do here in this button, I use the action set. I want to set the property.file. So I use add property.file. Okay, and here I can give a value. So I have this cat png, so I can use directly the file name cat png. Okay, but one thing that is very important. Okay, as you see, I have 3 image files here. Okay, but the thing is that only the redpanda.jpg is going to be copied into my app. Okay, because these 3 files are here in the rest folder. Okay, this means they are resources, but the thing is that Codoozer will only use the images that we are being using as a file parameter. Okay, so the cat png, and let me, no, it's not the dog, the one I want to use, not this one. Let me upload this unicorn. Okay, so yeah, I want the cat and the unicorn be included also inside the app. Okay, but they are not used in a file parameter. Okay, I'm going to use them only here in the as a reference. Okay, as the value of a reference. Okay, so if I want these apps to be copied into my app, I need to do this. Click on the plus button to add a new resource. Okay, and now we have to create a folder. So before dragging and dropping our files here, we need to set this folder called assets, A-S-S-E-T-S, assets. Okay, now I can drag and drop files here in this box. Okay, so now my files are here in the assets folder inside the rest folder. Well, and I also have the old version, so I can remove them. This one and this one. Okay, so yeah, let's have a new button. Now I'm going to clone this one and I will call it button unicorn. Okay, so let me change the text unicorn, and I will in the onClick event, instead of the cat PNG, I'm going to use unicorn PNG. So if they click on the cat button, I will change the value of the property.file to cat PNG, and if they click on the button unicorn, I will change the value of this reference to unicorn PNG. So the component will be listening to those changes. So as soon as I set a file name here as the value of this reference, then the component image will change the content. Okay, so let's generate the app and let's show you in my phone. But well, first let me change one thing. I forgot to use the v-align parameter. Okay, but the thing is that here on the visor on the Codoozer's dashboard, okay, all content is always aligned vertically on the top, but on the phone will be on the middle. So you have to take control of that and make sure you always use the v-align. Okay, and I will use top, then here also top, and here also top. Okay, then I will try to export again. Well, so here's the app. So let's see what happens if I click on cat and if I click on unicorn. You see, every time I press on these buttons, I'm changing the value of the reference property.file. Okay, so since the component is listening to this reference, as soon as I change the value, the image will change. Okay, so let's keep playing with the component. Let's imagine now that we want to use an online image. Okay, let's say I have this picture here, a JPEG file here on, well, this is in Flickr, but I mean, this is only an example. So instead of, I mean, this is a file. I mean, it's hosted on the internet, but it's a file. So you can put it here on the file field. Okay, and let's generate again. So let's try the app. I'm going to open it and you'll see that right after open the app will start downloading the image and it will show the image that was downloaded from the internet. You see? And I still can change. I mean, this is the default image. Okay, but if I put a value here on the property.file, then it will also change. Okay. So now I cannot go back to the default image. So let's see what happens if we use a URL inside the property.file. Okay, we can still use the red panda here as the default image. And now I'm going to use a new button. Let's clone this one. Okay. And let's call it pig. So instead of cat PNG, I can use the URL here. And change the text, online pig. And let's try again. So here's the app. I can change to cat, to unicorn, and to online pig. You see, well, it takes like 1 extra second because it has to download the image, but it works, right? Okay, so, well, in this example, I'm changing the content of the property.file with buttons, right? But, I mean, it there are so many ways to change the value of a reference without buttons. I mean, they can change because, I mean, somebody changed them. So, I mean, some event, I mean, some timer, or, you know, it can happen that in other parts of the app, this value is changed. Okay, so the component image will be still listening to the property.file reference. So let's do one more test. What if I use Firebase as a source? Can I use it? Yeah, of course you can. And let's see what happens. I mean, you know that Firebase has this database which is real time. Okay, so what if I want my component to listen to this real time database? Okay, so let's try. So if you want to use Firebase as a source, well, I'm assuming here that you already have the Firebase database. There will be other tutorials where I will explain how to configure Firebase, okay? But let's assume that we already know how to use it. Okay, so I'm going to use add Firebase dot Firestore, which is the database, the real-time database, and now I'm going to enter dot and the name of a collection that I think it's called, well, you can use the name you want, of course. Mine is called images. Then, well, it's here, Firestore. I'm going to create a new document called, well, it's um, let's start a new collection, call it images, and use one document called animals, for example, and the field will be like image. Okay, so here I'm going to use, let's say, cast.png. Okay, so here's my collection with this document, animals, and I have this parameter or this field in this document called image, and the value is cat.png. Okay, so I'm going to use images.animals.image. So images.animals.image. Okay, so what I'm expecting here is that the component will look in the Firebase database, in this collection, in this document, and in this field. So it will take the cat.png value and it will just, I mean, if the value is a file that is here inside assets, it will use that file as the image for the component. Okay, so let's try it. So I'm going to open the app and I'm expecting the red panda to show for a little bit of time while it's downloading I mean, while the app is accessing Firebase, right? So as soon as the component knows the value inside that file inside Firebase, then it will change the image. You see the red panda and boom, it changed to the cat. Okay, but this is not the coolest thing. So let me change the size of the screen so that I can show you my phone and also Firebase. Okay, so now the user is not going to press any button here on my app. So what happens if I change the value in Firebase? I said unicorn.png. You see? I mean, the app changed the image dynamically without user interaction. Okay, so imagine that I have this social app where two users are sharing the same database. So one of them can change the value from one instance of the app. Okay, and automatically, if the other user has the app open, I mean, and it has some view with some component that is listening to that file, I mean, to that field on Firebase, then the image will change automatically. Okay, so this is super cool, right? So what if I now use a URL here? Will it work? Okay, let's try. I have this image, again, the big one. Okay, so let's put it here as a value. You see? I mean, the user didn't press any button. And now the thing is that now I can, you see, I can still press the buttons and nothing happens, right? Because, well, this is because I mean, the component image is not listening to the property.file anymore. I mean, the component is listening to Firebase. So if I keep pressing these buttons, I'm changing the value of the property.file reference. But since no one is listening to that property or to that reference, then nothing happens. Okay, but let's do this last test. So I'm clicking on unicorn. Okay, so now the property.file is supposed to have the value of unicorn.png, right? So what if I, here on Firebase, instead of using a file name or a URL, what if I use here add property.file? Okay, so I'm from Firebase, I'm changing the source. I'm not really changing the source of the component because the source will always be firebase.firestore.images, blah, blah, blah. But it will download a new value. I mean, it will try to get the name of the file, but since the name of the file is not a name of a file, it's a reference, then it will keep continuing trying to find out the name of the file. So since it's a property, it will try to see if inside that property there's a file name. So let me update. And you see, now it's taking the value inside this property. Isn't that cool? So, well, with all of this, you can do amazing things. I mean, you can make your apps look super dynamic. And I guess most of you didn't know how powerful the component image can be in terms of dynamism. Well, I hope you found this tutorial very useful and you enjoyed it. So if you want to keep learning more about Codoozer, please subscribe to my channel.